like, I guess maybe flirtatious with my mother.
Who is Ted Wiley?
Ted Wiley was actually in a relationship with my Aunt Sherry for years.
Did you know him personally?
Oh yeah, I mean, he'd been around for a long time. I remember when I was a child, I mean, not that old, and maybe 7 or 8 years old, and that's when I don't remember the dates, but I was young.
So you knew of Ted Wiley long before any, as you say, suspicions of Ted and your mother?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
How well did you know him? Would you hang out with him, have conversations with him?
Oh yeah, he was very friendly. I remember, Christmases, we would always go to Christmas at my grandparents, Mama and Papa, which is my father's parents. Every year, Ted would be there, and he'd bring a football, and we'd, throw the football around, and he was always very kind, and he was a funny guy. And, he was part of the family.
Did you see Ted and Melody around each other in the late 2000s?
Yes.
Did you see them interact with one another?
Yes.
And did anything stand out to you at that time?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
I had ridden up to Florence, Alabama with my mother. I was actually picking up a vehicle that was my grandmother's, and we stayed at Ted's house, and he was sitting next to my mother. I was laying on the couch. Can't remember if I was still watching TV or if I was kind of in and out of drifting off to sleep. And I remember Ted and my mother sitting next to each other, and I just kind of thought it was just weird and uneasy. But this was actually November of 2008. So now that I think about that, yeah, it was November 2008. So I think that would probably be when my suspicions really began to arise.
And how did you know, how were your suspicions confirmed?
I was living in Buckhead with my ex-wife, Jenna, and my father told me, he's like, I need you to come up to Alpharetta tonight and have dinner with me. I said, okay. He said, meet me at Outback Steakhouse, the corner of Jones Bridge, Stage Bridge, and Alpharetta. And he sat me down and he said, Chris, I don't think we're going to be able to have Christmas this year. And he began to explain that, why we wouldn't. He told me that my mother had withdrawn, I believe, $50,000 from a home equity line of credit without his knowing about it, and he told me, I don't know if we're going to be able to have Christmas this year because of this.
Who was at that dinner?
I think it was, I know I was there, and I think one of my sisters, I think Amanda was there too, but I can't be sure about that.
What year was that?
Oh, that's a good question. It would have either been Christmas, right before Christmas of 2009. If I had to guess, that would be it. But it's been so long, I don't know the exact year.
And what happened after that? Between your father and mother?
Well, I know he filed for divorce.
How do you know about that?
Well, I got wind of it because I had stopped at the house in Alpharetta to use the restroom because I had a job where I drove around a lot, and I would stop in to use the restroom and or say hello. It's my parents' house, and I come to the door, and the door's open, and my sister's black lab is running around in the front yard, and there's a lady at the front trying to. What I come to find out very soon after that is serving her divorce papers. I called my father and I said, what's going on? And he said, well, I'm serving your mother with divorce papers. And that's how I found out.
And when was that? What year was that?
I would say either 2010 or 2011. I would, if I had to say, I would say probably 2010.
And where was your mom at the time?
She had locked herself in an upstairs bedroom and refused to come out to talk, I guess to avoid getting served.
At any point, did your mom leave your dad?
Can you clarify what leave means?
Leave the house for a significant period of time?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that?
She would leave and be up in Florence, Alabama for months at a time. Weeks, sometimes months.
How did you know where she was going?
My father would tell me.
Was that around the same time as the Ted Wiley
Yes.
affair? Okay.
Mhm.
Is that what prompted your dad to file divorce papers?
Yes.
Did they end up getting divorced?
No.
Do you know what happened?
She came home. He called me one day and said, she's coming home. I want you to forgive your mother and accept her back.
And did you do that?
I told him I would. But I would say I gave it my best try.
I want to go back a little bit to when you mentioned you moved to Maine.
Sure.
And you have 2 daughters. And did you have both at the time you moved to Maine, or just
No,
one?
that was 2 weeks after Ella was born. Ella's my oldest daughter.
Okay. And why'd you move to Maine?
Well, because we didn't have any money, and my wife, the mother of my children's parents, had a house in Maine on Lake Sebago, this beautiful house, and they said, hey, come live up here. And I had visited Maine a couple times, and I was all for it.
How did your parents react to that move?
They weren't happy about it. My mother was not happy, and my father, he understood, but if I had to say, I don't think he was happy about it.
Prior to moving, you ended up having Addison in Maine.
Yes.
And did your mom come up and help out with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
She was very supportive.
Oh yeah,
and
she was
helpful.
great. Hmm.
And she's always been supportive with your daughters,
Yes, very,
as was your dad.
very much so.
They love your daughters.
Yes.
I want to move forward a little bit. You mentioned this line of credit that your mother took without your dad's knowledge.
Yeah.
Did that change, did that affect their relationship moving forward, to your knowledge?
It affected it financially, I know, and I think it affected it at some degree, their trust, his trust for her. I can't speak for him, obviously, but I know for sure it affected it financially, for sure.
How did you know that?
Well, he basically told me he wasn't going to let that happen again. So I assume that, well, I know he basically took away her ability to be able to do that.
Okay. What does that mean?
I'm not really, he didn't share details with me at the time. But
What was your understanding of your mom's access to their finances?
before this happened with the HELOC, that they just shared everything. You know, it was
When you say
They hadn't-
HELOC, what is it that you're talking about?
home equity line of credit.
Okay, so before, you're talking about before that?
Yeah.
Okay, they shared everything.